The people have spoken. Donald Trump will be the next president of the United States of America. He says it's time to heal the wounds of a divided nation after his stunning victory over Hillary Clinton.
The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer.
There's jubilation from his supporters, but agony for Hillary Clinton's. She says America now owes Donald Trump the chance to lead, but defeat hurts.
This is not the outcome we wanted or we worked so hard for, and I'm sorry that we did not win this election.
So what does happen now? We'll have special reports and expert analysis on a result that's being described as the biggest political shock ever. You're watching Donald Trump, the next president, a 5 News Tonight special live from Washington. Hello and welcome to 5 News Tonight. I'm Sian Williams and we are live in Washington on the day Donald Trump has been elected the next president of the United States. Well, it came after a dramatic night which saw him defy the pollsters and condemn Hillary Clinton to a defeat that few people predicted. And it means that in January, he'll take over at the White House as the 45th president of this country. In his first speech since his victory, his key theme was unity. He said he will be the president for all Americans, that the forgotten men and women will be forgotten no longer, and that it's going to be, in his words, a beautiful thing. Our first report tonight comes from our political editor, Andy Bell.
Has there been a more extraordinary or unexpected sight in modern American politics? President-elect Donald J. Trump. In his campaign, he had often been brash, boastful, even insulting. Today, though, flanked by his vice president and his youngest son, he knew a different tone was expected.
Now it's time for America to bind the wounds of division. Have to get together. To all Republicans and Democrats and independents across this nation, I say it is time for us to come together as one united people. It's time. I pledge to every citizen of our land that I will be president for all Americans, and this is so important to me.
He had threatened his opponent with jail during the campaign. Again, he now had a different message.
Hillary has worked very long and very hard over a long period of time, and we owe her a major debt of gratitude for her service to our country.
And he concluded with a promise to those he believes delivered him this stunning victory.
Every single American will have the opportunity to realize his or her fullest potential. The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer.
Hillary Clinton conceded in a phone call to Donald Trump. This morning, she emerged finally to make what was probably the most painful speech of her life.
We have seen that our nation is more deeply divided than we thought. But I still believe in America, and I always will. And if you do, then we must accept this result and then look to the future. Donald Trump is going to be our president. We owe him an open mind and the chance to lead. This loss hurts, but please never stop believing that fighting for what's right is worth it.
At the start of the night, most had expected Hillary Clinton to win. This was supposed to be her victory party in New York. But by midnight, as states like Florida and Ohio were going to Trump, they started to realize something was wrong.
It's not official. Hillary Clinton could still win this, but it feels as if the results are all going one way, Trump's way, and it also feels as if they've given up hope.
Soon, even without a formal announcement, the Hillary supporters realised their party had turned into a wake, and they began leaving.
And he's absolutely the most frightening person I've ever come across in my lifetime. He is just full of hate, and he just hates everyone that's not a rich white male.
I really hope that he was just putting on a big show and that he doesn't really believe the things that he said, because what he said was unbelievable. And
How does President Trump sound?
it sounds horrible, like horrible.
In Times Square, a strangely silent crowd waited for the final confirmation of what was now undeniable. A few blocks away at Trump Tower, where the president-elect was watching the results, there were onlookers and some supporters.
They're tired of being told, this, we know what's best for you. It's time for people to say what's best for us, and I think we have by saying, we want Trump in the office.
We're tired of the lies and we want to drain the swamp and get America back to what it used to be.
And while they waited, some anger boiled over.
And I'm okay if you want, but I'm not happy about it.
She defended a child rapist. Hold on. Bill Clinton is a sexual predator, so get your
And he is not running for president.
New York Times.
Americans are waking up to a new president, and after 8 years of Barack Obama, a new vision of this country too. It's an outcome which has delighted half of them and appalled the other half.
Andy, President Obama, of course, still in office for a while. He's been talking this evening. What's he been saying?
Yes, Sian, it's not the result that President Obama wanted, and he must be wondering if President Trump will undo much of what he's done over the last 8 years. But today, President Obama was keen to emphasize that now it must be all about the smooth transition of power.
We're not Democrats first, we're not Republicans first, we are Americans first. We're patriots first. We all want what's best for this country. That's what I heard in Mr. Trump's remarks last night. That's what I heard when I spoke to him directly, and I was heartened by that.
Andy, we tend to use the word shock and upset so much in politics, but just sum up how much of a shock this Donald Trump victory actually is.
It's a huge shock, basically because all those people who thought they knew and understood what was going on have been proved to be completely wrong. The Republican Party establishment, which thought that Donald Trump couldn't have a chance, they were proved wrong. Hillary Clinton's team, who thought he was a relatively easy opponent to beat, they've been proved wrong. The media, who thought he could never be a serious politician, they've all been proved wrong. Essentially, the only person who, it turns out, has been right through all of this is Donald J. Trump. And he believed he was tapping into a sentiment among a lot of American voters that was basically in the mood for rejecting the establishment, for rejecting anyone associated with Washington. And even though he was clearly a flawed candidate in many ways, those voters still came out to back him because they wanted someone who was going to shake things up, who was not just business as usual. That was the sort of president it turned out they wanted. That is the sort of president they now have.
And we'll pick up those thoughts with some experts a little later on. For the moment, Andy, thank you. So how did Donald Trump secure that extraordinary victory? Well, around 120 million votes have been counted. Both he and Hillary Clinton have around 48%. In fact, her share is ever so slightly bigger. But what's crucial are those electoral college votes. And he has 278 to her 222. Remember, the victory line was 270. And this is how the American political map looks today. It's a sea of Republican gains. Most crucially, he won in the so-called swing states, where the vote could have gone either way. Among them, Florida. That was the place that analysts said he simply could not lose. Well, Julian Drucker is in the Florida city of West Palm Beach. We can talk to him now. Julian, how did he do it?
Sian, he won it with stealth, he won it with stamina, and to use his own vernacular, he won it bigly. We spent the night at a Republican Party event here, and over around 6 hours, we witnessed the sort of political jolt not seen in generations. For Donald Trump's supporters in the state he had to win, this was little more than an American revolution. The night started with modest expectations, but as exit polls came in and Mr. Trump was winning Republican states with healthy margins, they were daring to dream.
I don't want to be too confident yet because there's still a long way to go, but he's doing great. And I think he's doing better than the media thought he was going to do.
I mean, it's a ways to go yet, but, you know, he's going to do it. I really, truly believe that.
These were trepidatious times for Team Trump. But if there was a moment it first looked like he might just do it, this was it. Securing the key battleground of North Carolina.
It's going to be the new Brexit. It's the Trexit.
And it feels like it's happening now, doesn't it?
It is happening. It's felt this way the whole time.
If the West Coast comes in and it's blue, it's still anybody's race.
As the world watched Florida, Florida watched TV. Eventually, even Trump's must win was an actual win.
Donald Trump has taken Florida. It is the victory he and his supporters so desperately dreamed of.
But even at this point, a Trump presidency wasn't nailed on.
I'm dancing in the aisles, and it feels good. I don't want to celebrate prematurely, but I think we're going to do it.
We love Donald. He's going to make America back to what it used to be, and he's just going to be the best president. We've waited a long time. This is our Independence Day.
There's no more enthusiastic people on the face of the planet than a Trump supporter.
And you feel great tonight.
I'm just over the top. Over the top.
Then, for the followers of Trump, a slump. Enthusiasm waned in the wait for the final states. But by now, it was all academic. This electoral earthquake had taken place, changing the landscape, changing the world.
Julian, Donald Trump had to pick up so many swing states when the polls and, of course, the numbers seemed against him. Put it into context for us. How remarkable was that achievement?
It really is remarkable, Sean. As well as Florida, taking Pennsylvania really is remarkable. Not Republican since Ronald Reagan in the 1980s. What happened to that Hispanic vote then? It turns out that 33% of Hispanic men still voted for Donald Trump. Why is that? It turns out there are lots of older American Cubans who always vote Republican, it seems. It stems from a distrust of JFK, a Democrat, over the Cuban Missile Crisis. But we saw visceral anger in that Trump rally on Sunday. It was then he promised something on the scale of Brexit plus, plus, plus. 3 pluses is quite modest for Donald Trump because this truly, truly is the mother of all protest votes.
Now he's doing the presidency. The fascinating thing is...
Thank you very much, Julian. Let's pick up some of the things we've been hearing. Joining me now is Democratic pollster and political commentator Anna Greenberg and the political Republican analyst Shermichael Singleton. Now, you remember Shermichael was with us yesterday. Hey. Welcome to the program. Thanks very much for joining. Well, you were here yesterday. You were a Republican supporter who was not voting for Donald Trump, and here he is. He's going to be going to the White House. How are you feeling?
He's the leader of my party, and I'm going to support him, and I suspect all of the Republicans who did not are going to come home and support our president.
But you disagree with him. How hard is that going to be?
Of course I disagree, and there were Republicans who disagreed with President Bush. There were Republicans who disagreed with Governor Romney when he ran. I worked for him in 2012. There were Republicans who disagreed with Senator McCain when he ran, and so that's a part of politics. But we're all Republicans. We all care about America, and we're going to do everything we can to move the country in the right direction.
Anna, can I ask you about the polls as a pollster? How did they get it so wrong?
Well, I mean, I think actually it might help to look at Britain. And you look at the last election where the Tory vote was vastly underrepresented, and there was a commission that was put into place to study, and what they found was there's nothing wrong with the methodology of survey research per se, but that the sampling was wrong, talking to the wrong people. What you're going to see, I think, as the data comes in, as votes are counted, that there was a pretty significant drop in turnout. Right now, Trump got about 2 million votes less than Romney, Clinton about 7 million less than Obama. That means that's a lot of people who didn't vote who voted 4 years ago. Our models don't do a great job of capturing people who decide not to vote.
Right. Could it also be, though, that the forgotten men and women that Donald Trump was talking about, you weren't hearing them either?
I don't think so. I think if you have a drop in Democratic turnout, and the Republicans win, right? It doesn't mean you aren't counting the Republican votes. You have to get the proportion of Democrats and Republicans right in order to get your prediction to be correct. I mean, so I don't think so. I do think it's possible that the undecided vote, which was higher this cycle than we've ever seen, probably had some folks who were Trump voters who didn't want to say who they were voting for. But there's really no evidence of forgotten people, not in the polls. It's a matter of which party turned out at a higher rate.
Yeah, and Shamichael, you're agreeing with that?
I do agree. If you look across the board with African Americans, with college-educated women, with minorities, Secretary Clinton underperformed President Obama.
Yeah,
now I think the argument
36 of Hispanic men in Florida voted for Donald Trump. We've just heard that.
He performed better with minorities across the board than we did in 2012 with Governor Romney. And I'm sure there are a lot of theories about why. But again, I think if Vice President Biden was the nominee, he probably would have beaten Mr. Trump. I think it's a matter of not being able to turn out key constituencies, which Secretary Clinton clearly did not do.
Right. But I want to say something about that, though. In the research that I did with minority men in this election, there is some sexism here that people aren't really talking about. And older Hispanic men and many older African American men are pretty conservative. And I actually heard people in focus groups say, I'm not sure I want a woman president. So that has not been talked about for some reason, but we really need to talk about sexism.
Well, we do, but let's also look to the future. And I was out this morning talking to people. There is still a lot of division, a lot of incomprehension about how the country comes together, how it can be unified. What do you think, Shamichael? How can it do
Republicans control both houses of Congress and now the White House. It's going to be critically important that President Trump, once he steps into that White House January 20th, that he reaches across the aisle. Republicans need to reach across the aisle to listen to Americans who do not share our complete values and understand what they find critically important moving forward in some kind of way. We have to be able to compromise and say, look, we may not all get what we want, but we're going to do what's in the best interest of most of the American people. And that sounds easy, but it's not.
Not, Anna, is it?
Well, I think Donald Trump will find some way to bring us all together. I don't think that business interests want him to destroy the economy.
And you say that as a Democrat?
Absolutely. I believe that there are many things that he has said he would do on the campaign trail that a majority of Republicans oppose, certainly a majority of Republicans in Congress.
That's right.
And I think that they have a vested interest in getting elected in 2018, and business interests have an interest in having a strong economy, and he cannot wreck the economy without objections by people in the Republican Party.
I agree.
Good luck to you both. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you,
Michael
and Anna, too. Coming up on 5 News Tonight.
You're fired. And Keisha, you're fired.
Just how did Donald Trump go from the apprentice to president? And I've been speaking to people here in Washington about their reaction to the election result.
I don't mind the man, and I don't like her, so I voted for Trump.
We'll see you after the break. Welcome back to this special program, live from Washington on the day Donald Trump has been declared the winner of the American election. Well, before the election, many world leaders expressed serious concerns about the prospects of a Trump presidency. Today, the tone has been rather more measured. Let's speak now to our chief correspondent, Tessa Chapman. She's in Downing Street tonight. Tessa, what's been the reaction from number 10?
Well, we're told that Theresa May wrote a letter to Donald Trump this morning to congratulate him. In an interview this afternoon, she insisted that the historic special relationship would stay strong. Now, her tone was very considered. Don't forget, this time last year, she was very critical of his plan to stop Muslims entering America. But that was then. This is now. He will be president. So this is a fresh start.
I look forward to working with President-elect Trump. The American people have elected him as the next President of the United States. Britain and the United States share values of freedom, of democracy and enterprise, and I look forward to building on the special relationship we have between our two countries to ensure the security and prosperity of our two nations in the future.
And we'll be looking at that special relationship later, but what have other world leaders been saying tonight, Tessa?
They're sending congratulations, but choosing their words carefully. Angela Merkel, for instance, offered close cooperation. François Hollande said the result opened up a period of uncertainty. Now, both NATO and EU leaders offered for Donald Trump to come over for summit, and they all need to talk because there's good reason to be jittery. Don't forget, during his campaign, among many sound bites, he described NATO as a rip-off, said he would tear up trade agreements and welcomed the idea of another nuclear bomb. The world has tilted on its axis tonight.
Certainly has. Tessa, thank you very much. Well, here, the country is still reverberating with that news that the next president will be Donald Trump. It is impossible to overestimate what he's achieved here. He'll be the first leader in the White House to have no prior experience in either the government or the military. And he's a man who, about a year ago, was best known for being the host of a reality TV show. Well, Catherine Jones has been looking at Donald Trump's journey from presenter to president.
You're fired, Kate. You're fired. And Keisha, you're fired.
This is how most Americans know their next president.
You know, I can't fire you for being inappropriate. Because I'm inappropriate.
The Apprentice ran for 11 years, cementing Donald Trump's image as ruthless, successful, unconventional.
You're fired.
His is not a rags to riches story. In 1946, Donald Trump was born into wealth. His father, a New York property tycoon with German roots, his mother, an immigrant from Scotland. Taking over the family firm in the 70s, he excelled at self-promotion, the gleaming Trump name plastered on hotels, casinos and Manhattan skyscrapers. Even after his business sank $5 billion into debt at the end of the 80s, the Donald's profile just kept on growing.
Excuse me, where's the lobby?
Down the hall and to the left.
Thanks.
With cameo film roles and questions about his political ambitions.
You've said, though, that if you did run for president, you believe you'd win.
Well, I don't know. I think I'd win. I tell you what, I wouldn't go in to lose.
Well, he did win, and President-elect Trump now has not just one, but a whole string of controversial policies to deliver.
I would bomb the out of him.
A total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States.
A great border wall.
As well as building that wall, he's pledged to ban Muslim immigrants, massively cut taxes and put up trade barriers, plus cancel climate change measures, scrap the Obamacare system, expand the military and clean up politics. However, one man who knows his personality well says Trump, the president, may be surprisingly different from Trump, the campaigner.
The seeds of Trump's defeat in 4 years would be in any extreme measures that he takes. So as a man who doesn't want to fail, I think he'll be moderated mainly by his ambition.
But never has a candidate been so personally controversial, and the scrutiny of Donald Trump's past behaviour will not end today. Victory may yet be more bitter than sweet for Donald Trump. Catherine Jones, 5 News.
Well, we heard the Prime Minister Theresa May talking about that special relationship between the UK and America. Let's speak now to Lord Rennick. He served as UK ambassador to the United States from 1991 to 1995 when George Bush Sr. and Bill Clinton were US president. Welcome to the programme. Thank you very much for being with us, Lord Rennick. We did hear Theresa May saying the special relationship will stay strong. It's going to be a fresh start. But what difference do you think Donald Trump will make to that relationship with Britain?
Well, I certainly think that the especially close relationship with Britain will continue and endure. I just wrote a book called Fighting with Allies, explaining why and how it has endured through successive changes of president and prime minister for the last 7 decades. And the reason for that is it's not based on sentiment, it's not based on history, it's based on common interests. And the first item on Trump's agenda is going to be the fight against IS. Now, the only military allies he's got in that fight against IS, apart from the local forces, are Britain and France. So that's a common interest up front. He's all in favour of Brexit, so there's not going to be a difficulty over that. He will get on perfectly well with Theresa May, in my opinion. And the Brexit, which is going to impose big costs on Britain in terms of trade with Europe, also creates a very important opportunity for us, which is to negotiate a free trade agreement with the United States, which has a more dynamic economy. And the Trump team have already indicated, as have many congressional leaders, that they would favor that. So we need to get on with the actual substance of this relationship, and there's plenty to discuss constructively.
Plenty to discuss, indeed. NATO is a rip-off, he says. He's talked about potentially bombing Middle East countries, a trade war with China, a closer relationship with Russia. Any of that make you nervous?
Look, the people wildly overestimate the power of the President of the United States. The Founding Fathers anticipated a Donald Trump or any other potential maverick. The separation of powers in the US is more draconian than anywhere else in any other constitution. He will wrestle to get his plans and programs past the congressional leaders. I know them well. They're not great fans of his. They are pragmatists who will tone all this down. Furthermore, the rhetoric, too, will have to get toned down. The danger is, obviously, that he will go on making statements off the cuff and on the hoof, and that is dangerous in foreign policy. Unpredictability is not good in foreign policy, but he is right that the Europeans are not making nearly enough contribution to their own defense.
Okay. Lord Rennick, thank you very much for your time today. It will be very interesting to see how the politics plays out in the next days and weeks. But let's step away from that for a moment. What are the thoughts of the people here in Washington about their new leader? I joined some of them for breakfast. Ben's Chili Bowl has been part of Washington life since 1958. Over the years, presidents have stopped by on their way to the White House. This morning, regulars are digesting the latest news.
I think our institutions in the United States are very strong. Our institutions of democracy, our Congress, our histories and our cultures about dealing with political differences. I'm okay.
You've met Donald Trump.
I've met him a couple times in New York and once here. And he's actually a pretty smart, gracious guy. And he exposed a hurting pain in our country that has not been dealt with for a long time. And I'm hoping that he really will help middle America get back on its feet.
Who did you vote for?
Hillary. You win some, you lose some. But it's good, though, because God got it.
God's got it?
Yes, God got it. So whatever comes down the pipe, I'm all right with it.
I think the American people came out and voted. That's what I think. And I think the people that didn't want Hillary Clinton, that might not have liked Trump, stayed home. I don't mind the man, and I don't like her, so I voted for Trump.
Your dad feels the same way? Do you feel the same way, Dad?
Pretty much. But I've always felt like we should have a businessman in the White House.
It's going to be difficult, but he's there now, and we've got to find a way to make it work.
Do you think he'll come here?
I don't know. I'm inviting him.
You're inviting
I'm
Trump?
inviting him. I'm inviting Trump to come
Ben's
here.
Chili Bowl.
To Ben's Chili Bowl. Come and sit down with Harold Bell. Maybe you can learn something from me.
Well, of course, the diners want unity. Remember, though, this is America's Brexit, a roar against the political establishment, the voices of the angry who were told the economy was going their way and they just did not feel it. They voted for change here, just like at home. That means a bumpy ride for a while, and we'll feel it in Britain. Donald Trump says he will get along with other nations who are willing to get on with America. We won't know what that means until he starts. Until then, there's a good deal of healing to be done in a very polarized country. Shell shock in some parts here, jubilation in others. But today, the outsiders became the insiders. What that means for us all is very unclear. From me and all the team here in Washington, thank you very much for watching tonight. Goodbye.